And welcome to another episode of the SD4L show. I'm Justin Thin. I'm here with my co-host Matt Sheehan. Matt, what would you like to talk about today?
The football team. And the football team, I'd like to talk about the football team and Aidan Chiles as well, mixed in with some football team. Justin, is that going to be cool on your end? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's good. We'll talk
thank
about
God.
the esports team a different day. But those are the only two things on my radar. Aidan Chiles is a good place to start, Matt. But before that, how you doing today?
I'm doing just quite well over here, but you know what I want to know, Justin? How are you doing? Because once again, no one in the history of mankind has ever asked Justin Thin how he is doing. So let me be the first, Justin. How are you doing today? Doing okay?
Matt, I cannot complain. We are on the verge of crystal ball season. We're on the verge of official visits being back. It is exciting times. Cannot wait for the full swing of recruiting to be kind of the main topic that we're talking about after the months of the coaching search. I was just ready to analyze top 12 lists by kids that only have 14 offers to begin with, things of that nature. So
sure,
we're definitely back in the wheelhouse here. But Aidan Chiles, as good of a place to start as any in that regard. Pretty good quarterback. Pretty good.
Yeah. Do you think Jonathan Smith is looking at him? You think that's going to be connection there? No,
it's a toss up. There's a lot of good quarterbacks on the roster right now, so you gotta weigh that against
a lot of competition. Yeah, I don't know if he's built for the grind. You're right.
Yeah. Hey, if there's ever a time to promise a kid the starting job and it not actually upset the chemistry of the room, now might be the
time. Yeah, you're striking gold right there. Yeah. Oh man, this is exciting. Look at us talking about Michigan State football, smiling. Yeah. I'm sure the viewers and the listeners are also smiling right now as well, which what a foreign concept, smiling when talking about football. But there's reason to be optimistic. And it's been a nice start to the Jonathan Smith tenure. And yes, this Aidan Chiles thing, probably we'll call it the worst kept secret of all time, but it is nice that he is officially in the portal finally.
Right.
And he is visiting this weekend. And man, oh man, look, one player doesn't change a football team. But let's not get ourselves. Quarterback's the most important position here. Right. And this kid, in his short amount of time at Oregon State, look, he's rated the number one quarterback on 24/7 Sports for a reason.
Right. Yeah, he is going to be one of those guys that on day one changes the way that teams have to scheme against the program. Obviously, partially that was going to happen regardless, just because it's a brand new offensive coordinator, brand new scheme. Yeah. But let's just say like that wasn't even the case, right? And let's say like Mel Tucker was still here and somehow he gets Aidan Chiles. The way that you had scouting reports written on Michigan State's offense, all of that, it immediately would have gone out the window. He's a quarterback that you don't really have someone on your scout team to emulate. He's like kind of one of those guys. I'm not saying he's going to come in and break Big Ten records or anything like that. He's probably going to have some bumps, but he's just a guy that you are not going to find a mirror or a replica of or a close substitute of when you're trying to scout against them or when you're trying to defend in practice and game plan against them and see what it's like. I guess I've seen a lot of like comparisons out there the last few days, like play style wise. I think one of the ones that is close to what I'm comfortable with agreeing to is maybe sort of a Terrell Pryor kind of a thing. Okay. I think he's a more accurate passer than Terrell Pryor. I think his arm is maybe at the same spot, maybe a little below. If you give Terrell Pryor a 9 out of 10 on arm strength, or maybe you give Aidan Chiles an 8.8 out of 10. But I think he's more accurate. I think he's more elusive than Terrell, but I don't think he's as strong of a runner. I don't think you're going to see him maybe lowering the shoulder as much as maybe Terrell did. But like that's the kind of guy you're looking at. And he's not a traditional pocket passer, obviously, as you can see most of the highlights that there are of him. He's running around making things happen, but he's also not the type of quarterback like, I don't want to say like JT Barrett, just because like it would be stupid for JT Barrett to try to throw the ball more than he did because he really wasn't a good thrower. So like he knew his strengths and he did what he was supposed to do, but he's not one of those guys that just gets the ball and he just looks to run immediately. Like his first intention is to be a thrower of the ball. I guess like Jalen Hurts, like in that regard, I don't want to just use that familiarity bias because I watch him every Sunday and say, oh, he's similar to his tendencies. But like Hurts, you'll see like his first desire is literally never to run unless it's a read option. And that's kind of how I see Chiles. And yeah, legit thrower of the ball. He's not just a dual threat because he can throw, unlike a JT Barrett. He can throw, but he's a special runner. What do you like about him?
No, I mean, everything you said right there, but I'm sorry. I just had PTSD flashbacks to JT Barrett. You said he wasn't a good passer, which, like, by and large in his career,
Right.
like, there's some truth to that. But God, that one night in 2014, my God, he was just dropping balls and buckets everywhere all over the field. Anyway, regardless.
Yeah. But I mean, so did Cade McNamara, and he's not necessarily a good thrower of the ball either.
No. But no, I do like what you say about his legs, and it isn't necessarily run first. It's just more of a weapon that he can use to extend plays, which right now, talk about the quarterback room being thin. The offensive line room, a little thin right now as well. And look, there's plenty of time to shore that up. There's the whole transfer portal window and then the spring portal window. There's reason to believe that can be fixed a little bit. But hey, let's say the offensive line isn't top notch.
Right.
At least you got this guy extending plays a little bit. But yeah, it's also just the cannon for an arm. Like, the only thing that I think about as I'm staring at the ceiling before going to bed is just that one clip of Aidan Chiles throwing it from 20-yard line to 20-yard line. Like, that's going to play here in a lot of places, in the East Lansing especially. So yeah, happy to have that from Aidan Chiles. Should he come up? Here's where I'm going to bring the conversation right now. Look, it's well known that this is like 99% looking good for Michigan State. Mm-hmm. He's visiting this weekend. Like, is it as simple as, like, we are on commitment watch this weekend? Like, expect by Sunday for there to be something?
Right. Yeah. I think I refer to kind of the quotes that he gave Brandon Huffman today, paraphrasing along what those kind of were. He essentially said, like, yeah, I don't have my mind made up, but like my only visit right now is to Michigan State, and it's coming up this week. And I'm not sure like what other schools are interested in me. My parents are mostly handling that. And then he named a couple schools that talked to him directly. And then he said, I'm sure there's others too, but I haven't really kept track. So like,
really interested then.
Yeah. He has not made it any secret that Michigan State is the way he's strongly leaning. You even see his dad, Adrian Chiles, retweeting the fact that some college football like account tweeted out his stats and the fact that he's expected to follow Jonathan Swift to Michigan State, and his dad had retweeted that. So, and based on all the information I've heard the last few days, if he doesn't end up at Michigan State, it would easily be the biggest shocker of my time doing this. So like, you cannot call anything a done deal in college football, let alone in the transfer portal. But like, so like if something happens, like we're all going to be sitting there as equally shocked as one another. But like right now, there's really no reason to not be optimistic. And I'm always one of the first people to tell people not to be optimistic. Like, maybe people that aren't on the message boards don't know that, but like if there's a rumor about like a DC, or if there's a rumor about this or that, or like this recruit leaning this way, or even the whole coaching search, like my like main thing is like, if something isn't done, I'm not going to let people believe that it's close to done. But like this one is kind of looking good right now.
It was just funny. Like, the portal opens up on Monday and Chiles enters the portal, and like the reporters weren't even like, oh, could he follow Jonathan Smith to Michigan State? Like, no, everyone that had an opinion about this, that has a respected opinion, like that is actually in the recruiting media, we're already saying like, oh, he's going to do great in East Lansing, or oh, Jonathan Smith is going to do awesome with Aidan Chiles following him, like as if it was already a done deal. So this is why we're talking about this, not just because we're arrogant and just blind homers of Michigan State, but man, just like you said, JT, you put it brilliantly. Like, if there's ever a lock in this day and age of college football, especially in the transfer portal, like this is probably as close as it could possibly be. Now, I will knock on wood. I'll do my due diligence here, but I mean,
I did as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And you do raise a great point about the guys outside of our scope, like the national guys that were talking about this on the 24/7 Transfer Palooza show. Like when Huffman and like when Huffman and Cooper Patagna and like other guys were talking about it on the show, like first they had talked about it as like a near certainty that he was going to Michigan State. Like they didn't even entertain the possibility he went elsewhere.
Correct.
Then later in the show, when they were just talking about quarterbacks in general and how they might fit here or there, Kyle McCord, how he might fit at Nebraska, Dylan Gabriel, how he might fit at Oregon, Dante Moore, how he might fit at various places. they didn't even give Chiles any like possible coverage in that realm because there was no theorizing of where could he go. They had already covered it in the scope of a near certainty to Michigan State.
This is great.
So I mean, if I'm wrong, if you're wrong, everybody's wrong.
Oh,
Matt.
sorry.
So
Yeah,
we're in the biggest majority that there could be right here in terms of what the insiders are saying.
This is just so nice for us Michigan State fans because we can't take any more drama in 2023. We can't. Like if it was between like Michigan State, School A and School B, like I don't have the mental and emotional bandwidth to do this. So like this is just nice that you are getting this treasured quarterback with like almost little to no drama whatsoever.
Right.
So
yeah,
Kyle's family, thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You know, I went like after I put in the crystal ball on Monday morning, my next thing was I'm like, all right, well, my information here is absolutely bulletproof, but it's going to be so exhausting when I open Twitter and Chiles is tweeting like, "Don't believe the crystal balls," or he tweets like,
"Go Tigers,"
like an eye roll emoji and like a shush sign, and people are going to be like, "Oh no, what's happening?" But he didn't even do that, and it was just he tweeted his announcement, and then today he gives the coats to Huffman, and he's like, "Yep, Michigan State on Saturday. We'll see what happens. Go from there."
It's great,
very refreshing.
Well, not to treat the poor Oregon State roster, and I still truly do feel bad. I know that there's a few of the fans that are getting mouthy on Twitter, but like by and large, I feel bad for Oregon State fans. However, that's not going to stop me from looking at their roster and all those players entering the transfer portal as if I am looking at the Christmas catalog, Justin, because, look, there are some names. And, yes, I say this fully understanding that, no, like, Oregon State just doesn't ooze 4-star recruits or 5-star recruits, but the already proven players entering the transfer portal, kind of who I have my eye on right now. And, of course, a lot of us gravitate to the name Jack Velling, the tight end that caught more tight end touchdown passes than anyone in the nation.
Right.
But what other names like should we be hoping follow Jonathan Smith to East Lansing?
I'm glad you asked, Matt, because as I've opened my phone here to go to the Twitter draft where I have a list of said names, I see right here, actually, let me pull it up bigger. Jermod McCoy. Actually, you're not going to be able to focus on that. Anyway, he tweets out an Oregon offer right here.
Yep.
Right under that, Aidan Chiles is giving that the thumbs down and the barfing emoji.
Excellent.
And that's great work there. But yeah, Jermod McCoy, he's the true freshman corner that played the latter stretch of the season, did very, very well for Oregon State. Our Chris Hummer at 24/7, he called him one of the best true freshmen in the country, not just at corner, but in the country.
Gotcha.
He entered the portal yesterday, and Michigan State has as good a shot as anybody right now. I mean, we'll see about this Oregon offer that came in 1 hour ago, and then this Utah offer that came in 14 minutes ago. SMU, got a Washington offer as well. Yeah, so he's got all the good offers out on his side of the country.
Confirmed. Yeah. He's good. Yeah. Okay.
So Michigan State also offered today, but I'm sure that this was no surprise to him. He's a big Coach Blue Adams guy. Blue got him playing as a true freshman, and he was not rated that highly. So he's somebody that is worth monitoring very closely. Jack Velling is a good name that you said. I do want to reiterate to people that he's not going to be a guy that comes in and you build your offense around him. He averaged, I think I want to say about 2.7 receptions per game last year.
Right.
2.4, actually. So only 29 catches in 12 games. However, of those 29, 8 were touchdowns. So even if your boost that you're getting from adding Velling is simply more end zone production or red zone production from the tight end room, you will absolutely leap for that any day of the week.
Yeah.
For sure. Like if you got to get to the red zone in different ways and he's not your guy, I guess between the 30 and the 30, so be it. But I'm sure that that's also something that he was just a sophomore last year. I'm sure he's growing and he's developing his route tree in the intermediate and deep parts of the game. So he's another guy. Then Matt, the Arnold brothers.
Yes.
Achilles Arnold and Easton Mascarenas Arnold. Both of them were captains this year for Oregon State. Both of them entered the portal tonight. Achilles was rated as one of the best safeties in the entire country. Yep. Easton Mascarenas Arnold had 102 tackles, and he's one of those coverage linebackers that I wouldn't say coverage linebacker, but he's a linebacker that can cover. And Michigan State doesn't necessarily have one that I would say is comfortably somebody that you throw into coverage all the time. Jordan Hall did the best that he could, and he looked better because the other guys on the team really couldn't do much in that role. But he's somebody that you would rather have be a run fit guy, a Mike linebacker in the middle. Like, you don't want him to be doing stuff that you ideally would just have a coverage linebacker to do while he stays in the box. So like if they can get him somehow, they don't necessarily need a safety, but like when you can get one that's that good, as Easton's brother, you take it. But yeah, like they absolutely need a guy like Easton. You would definitely take a guy like Velling because Malik Carr is as hot and cold as it gets, and Brendan Parachek and Jack Nickel and Michael Masunas. I think they all have potential, and I think that Brian Wozniak can get it out of them better than Gilmore definitely could. So we'll see, but you'll take a guy that led the NCAA in touchdowns any day of the week for the tight end position if you can. And then this true freshman corner that's going to be a true sophomore next year, McCoy. Those are the five that my name those are the five names that my mind gravitates to right away. If you can go 3 for 5 there, you got a good base, especially if one of those is Easton. If you go 5 for 5 there, after that, you're pretty much just looking at maybe another linebacker and then offensive line and maybe DT depth. So you have a good amount of your portal, and portal needs addressed just from your old roster before even venturing out from there if they can make that happen.
Correct. And just getting away from the transfers, but also guys that have Oregon State attached to their name.
Mm-hmm.
The high school recruits. And now about like, it seems like 6 minutes before we started recording, Wyatt Hook announced that he's going to be visiting this weekend. He also decommitted from Oregon State as well. 3-star running back Brandon Tulis also going to be visiting this week. But I mean, of course, both those guys are guys that we want in the green and white as well. But as far as star power and star rating goes, the following weekend, the 15th to the 17th, there is one Rustin Yun out of the Great Islands of Hawaii. Offensive tackle prospect, of course, likes to follow Coach Maholchek. Could be to East Lansing. So those are the 3 Oregon State commits right now that are scheduled to visit East Lansing, at least that I have in my notes right now. Sorry.
And Andrew Brinson's another one that is definitely somebody to watch. He's scheduled to visit on the 15th as well.
Gotcha. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, he decommitted. I want to say the night or the day after that Jonathan Smith got the job here. And so out of the names that you mentioned, I think Rustin Young, where he is as a 4-star, he's at a good spot. I think Brandon Tulis is probably good where he is as well. But the 2 guys that I would say are underrated are Brinson and Wyatt Hook. Wyatt doesn't have a ton of evidence as a blocker in his tape, but he's as good of a receiving prospect at tight end that I've seen Michigan State recruit in my time covering Michigan State.
Gotcha.
He looks very, very comfortable lining up anywhere as a receiver, going up against cornerbacks, bodying them throughout the route, or simply beating them off the line, getting separation, and then making guys miss downfield, stiff-arming safeties, a spin move here and there. So like he's a very refined pass catcher as a tight end. Again, like his blocking might need some work. Maybe they just don't ask him to block and he's fine at it because he does line up outside as like an X receiver sometimes. So it might just be a thing of where he's not asked to do it. But he's someone that's I consider underrated. And then Andrew Brinson, he's as all around as it gets. I know I tweeted a brief scouting report on him. He's a Tampa, Florida kid. He's 6'1.5", a legit like verified 6'1.5". He smothers guys at the line as a press corner. He gets in their face. He gets his hands off of him. And at the same time, he, in addition to being physical and lighting guys up in the box and having some launching penalties here and there, he also can cover guys stride for stride down the field. I'm talking 30, 40 yards without losing a step on guys. So he's as all around as it gets. So those are the 2 that I would say are underrated for sure out of the 4 that you mentioned.
I've got an off-the-wall question here that we did not talk about before, so I'm throwing you on the spot right now. Get ready for this one. Which of the assistants you think is already having the most impact here, whether it be transfers, whether it be recruiting? Because we've named just about every assistant coach here: Blue Adams, Maholchek, Wozniak. We also got guys like Banafa, Louis Sanoa. So no shortage of good answers here, but like, is there one guy that is like blowing you away right now as far as, already building this roster?
Actually, I do have someone that's not an assistant coach. I would say
Okay.
the general manager, Cole Moore.
Gotcha.
What he has done, I don't necessarily know what the structure of the recruiting department is right now, as a lot of the guys from the previous staff opted to kind of leave now so that they have a better chance of finding their next jobs. Because I don't think their futures are guaranteed past January, but I think Smith did ask them to stay until then, and was more than happy to have them here. But I believe they were more so looking to get a head start on their next job. So because of that, um, Cole Moore has essentially been doing a lot of this stuff by himself, is my understanding. Maybe I'm off on that, but um, I'm talking about like him actually using one of those 10 on-field assistant spots and going out on the road. He was at Jaden Walker's basketball game last night where Lincoln Riley
Okay.
himself was there. He's networking with pretty much all the coaches in the Midwest. He's the one sending out a lot of portal offers. He's grinding tape. He's finding guys. He's building relationships with recruits, especially at the position groups where there's no coach yet, like a linebackers coach. He's doing all of that by himself. The work that Cole has done so far here in the early days, I think he's definitely one of the unsung heroes. And then Coach M, like he's just solidly trying to get his guys that he recruited at Oregon State. He's trying to go ahead and obviously be active in the portal. He's going after just guys that are going to be people he can develop and people that he believes in from a skill set standpoint, no matter where they're ranked. And that's worked for him for the longest time. And Coach Wozniak, like he's recruiting Ohio. He sent out an offer to a defensive end in Ohio today. Just like he was born in Ohio before he went and played at Wisconsin, and he's carrying his load there. And Dylan Messman, he talked about Coach Waz a couple weeks ago, or a week or so ago, to Corey Robinson when Waz offered him, and he said that he was a big fan of him early on. So we'll see what their tight end class looks like this time around, but those guys have definitely done a great job for sure.
And I'm just keeping you on the hot seat. Like I'm just peppering
Yeah.
questions off you this episode, I guess. But so this weekend, obviously, there's some visitors. There's plenty of, guys that are already committed to Michigan State. There is a kid that is a Minnesota commit right now from the state of Michigan. He's from Gaylord, Brady Pretzlaff. Now, of course, you could already, notice that there's interest there. If he's already committed to Minnesota, but he wants to come here, check out the staff. The question isn't about Brady, though, right now. There is no defensive coordinator. There's a linebackers coach. And maybe it's a defensive coordinator / linebacker coach thing. But Justin, is that important to have the defensive coordinator? Or am I just like a casual fan for thinking you might want to have a defensive coordinator here for these visits so they can meet the defensive players? Or is that just kind of a little overblown on my part?
Yeah, I think it's definitely ideal to have one of your vacancies filled as the days go on. But I think this is the most important hire that Jonathan Smith will ever make as the head coach at Michigan State. The defensive coordinator spot, like this guy who he hires, will have complete autonomy and he'll be left to his own devices over on that side of the ball. And it has to be a great hire. So if it takes another 3-4 days, because let's say you start with Phil Parker and Jimmy Lake and you wanted to make sure that those guys say no before you go anywhere else, I'm all for that approach. I think at the end of the day, as long as you get the right hire, this doesn't really seem like an issue to me at all. And I guess speaking about Brady, for instance, I was talking to him about kind of the DC situation, and I'm just saying, like, how does that factor into the visit? He was like, yeah, he's like, it'd be good if he's there this weekend, but I'll just change my OV to next weekend if I have to, if there's no DC. So he doesn't seem concerned about that at all. It's honestly more so people like you, people on the message boards. It's like us that are like every single day, like, is there going to be a DC today?
Impatient people is what they call it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Panickers. Yeah.
Right. So like, yeah, somebody like Brady, whose actual next 4-year future depends on this DC hire, he seems more calm about it than some of us. So yeah, I think I'm guessing your next question is going to be what the candidates look like. So I'll just kind of parlay this into
Let's
there.
see. What is next in my notes here? And oh my god, would you look at that? Hey, Justin. Candidates. Yeah, no, you already mentioned
Yeah.
Phil Parker. You mentioned Jimmy
Mhm.
Lake, of course, and those are two very popular
Right.
names for the right reasons. No question about that. And you had a piece not too long ago about defensive coordinator candidates that could be just somewhat tangibly
Right.
tied to Mr. Jonathan Smith. But let's say like it's going to be a wild card and it's not going to be someone that has any prior working
Right.
experience with him. Do you have a name that could tickle our fancy over here, or what do you got for us, Justin?
A couple of days ago, I guess first starting with Lake before I transition into like why I was looking at just other names. Um, I was able to confirm for sure, and my colleague Corey Robinson was able to also confirm for sure that like Jimmy Lake is a candidate for sure. Like
Okay.
there's no gray area about that. But I know that David Harns at Spartans Illustrated had kind of indicated that the chances of him being the next DC were kind of high.
Mhm.
I personally did not hear that. So if that does end up happening, then credit will go to David on that for sure.
Okay.
The only thing I was ever able to hear was that he was a candidate for sure. And that was a few days ago. So since that hasn't progressed to the point where he's been hired, or to the point where I know people are speculating on Twitter today, oh, maybe they'll hire him and he just won't join the team until January. Even if
Right.
that were to happen, you would still get the tweet announcement immediately. Like Bruce Feldman or Pete Thamel would say, Michigan State is targeting Jimmy Lake as their next defensive coordinator, but he will not join the program until January. In the meantime, he will be recruiting over the phone or something, or he'll make one trip to
Mhm.
the official visit weekend in December and then go back to the Rams. Like that's not why that this process would be delayed, even if that's the case. So because of this just lack of movement on that front, and the fact that it seems like Phil Parker once again, like as he turned down Nick Saban a few years ago when Kirby Smart went to
Right.
Georgia, turned down Michigan after Don Brown left. It seems like once again he's staying at Iowa until the day he's done coaching.
Yeah.
So with that being the case, I just started expanding the footprint from all right, who does Jonathan Smith know? Because if it was somebody that he knew, I'm guessing it would have been someone that he already would have hired, like an Andy Avalos. I think like that would have been done by now if he wanted to do it. I don't think he wants to. So then I was like, okay, who are just some good defensive coordinators in general? I started going through Bruce Feldman's list from before the season. That was the top 30 assistant coaches in all of college football. It's not just OCDC, it's just all the best assistants in college football. And just scrolling names, there was a few good ones. Number 11, that's what stuck out to me the most. That's Joe Rossi at Minnesota.
Gotcha.
Rossi, who Feldman dubbed in the piece as the best kept secret in all of college football, he's 44 years old, which I was not aware of just because he's been in Minnesota as the DC for about 6 years now. And I knew he was the DC at Rutgers before that, under Kyle Flood, I believe. Or was Kyle Flood or Chris Ash the coach
I
three
get it
coaches
mixed up.
ago?
I
Yeah.
think it was Chris Ash, but
Okay.
I get
So
it mixed up. I get it mixed up.
right. It was the coaching staff three. It went Schiano, coach before that, and the coach before that. That's who Rossi was
Okay,
the
so
DC
Flood.
for. Okay.
That would be
So
yeah.
and when he was the DC at Rutgers, they won 8-5 in their first year in the Big Ten under him. And then he came over to Minnesota. And when PJ Fleck made him the defensive coordinator with 4 games left in the 2018 season when they fired their other defensive coordinator, they were ranked. Actually, I was taking notes on this, so let me just pull this up anyway and give the actual statistical data. So
Okay.
when Rossi was hired or when he was named the interim defensive coordinator by PJ Fleck in the middle of 2018, or I should say with 4 games left, Minnesota was allowing 31.8 points per game.
Nice.
They were allowing 429 yards per game. Rossi takes over with 4 games left, and Minnesota then starts to give up 14.8 points per game and 300 yards per game. Take over as the interim in the middle of a season on a week-by-week basis, reshaping the defense just like that. Same personnel,
That's unbelievable.
same
That's crazy.
everything.
Wow.
2019, his first season as the permanent DC, they were 38th in the nation in points per game and 9th in yards per game. That was their first of 3 seasons where they would finish top 10 in total defense. Then 2020 in the COVID shortened season, they took a step back. Then in 2021, they finished third in the nation in yards per game. 2022, they finished ninth in the nation in yards per game. So those are your 3 years with top 10 total defense yardage wise. And then also in 2021 and 2022, they finished top 10 in scoring. So scoring defense top 10 twice, total defense top 10 3 times. And then this past year, lost a lot of talent, and also the offense couldn't help them out a remote bit. Defense took a step back. Even that step back, they were 58th in the country, so top 50th percentile, so still middle of the pack. So 3 of their last 5 seasons, they've had a top 10 defense at Minnesota in yardage. And at the end of the day, you can do that. Sure, like you come to the Big Ten East, might be a notch below that. Well, I guess divisions are out of the picture, but you know what I mean? Like they were boosted by like a little easier of a schedule. But like that's literally the only flaw you have about Joe Rossi is he didn't play the same level of teams that Michigan State did every single week, but he did as good of a job as he could have asked for out of that schedule. He put 10 guys in the NFL draft since 2019. So that's 10 guys in 4 drafts, including second rounder Antoine Winfield and second rounder Boye Mafe, who the Seahawks took.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty much all that I didn't dive too deep into him. The only other thing I did was,
that's not a deep dive. That's a shallow dive. Nice. That's nice. Look at that.
Yeah, like I didn't ask around about him or anything like that. Like if I hear like more of a need to, I'll do that at that point. But the only other thing I did was I went on YouTube and I just looked for a 2023 Minnesota full game, and I went through the first 2 drives of the UNC Minnesota game this year just to see how they line up on different formations or different down and distances. It's a 3-4 defense with one of the 4 linebackers always being a stand-up edge, but it's not a 3-4 defense that has a nose tackle and 2 3-4 prototypical defensive ends. What it is a basically regular defensive tackles, like traditional 4-3 defensive tackles. You don't need a big house of a guy that's like a nose tackle. Mm-hmm. It's defensive tackle, sandwiched on both sides with a traditional defensive end and the stand-up edge rusher. So Michigan State, if they were to hire Rossi, would not have to redefine their roster composition from the defensive line perspective, but they will need just a solid amount of linebackers that can cover behind that, which they would need anyway, no matter who they brought in. But Rossi's defenses are susceptible to rely on linebacker coverage more so than maybe a 4-2-5, where like the defense is just eager to bring the nickel on any chance or any reason they have to bring on a nickel. If there's 3 receivers on the field, they just immediately have the nickel there. Rossi's defenses more so do that when there's 4 receivers on the field, it seemed like, at least from those 2 drives. So we'll see like what would need to come with that. But I guess other names, the Rossi I just kind of hung on to because like what I saw in like the Feldman piece and kind of where the research took me and those facts that are just easy to state about the top 10 defenses and all that.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Right.
It checks out everything. Yeah.
Right. 44 years old. He knows the Big Ten. Right. Wouldn't hurt with Brady Pretzlaff, who's coming into Minnesota.
Certainly not. Yeah.
Right. And like develops guys more than anything. Like it'd be one thing if someone's just a magical schemer, but they're not putting guys in the NFL because the scouts are seeing right through it and they're like, oh, he's not developing individual talent. It's just the scheme. So he does it all really. Other than that, like I would be remiss if I didn't mention Jim Leonard, just because like he seems like someone you have to mention. Like sitting at Illinois as just an analyst right now, and he had some pretty good defenses at Wisconsin, even though his defenses his very final year weren't that great. But I mean, that's just 1 year of a long sample size. I guess I don't know necessarily what his long track record is, but like maybe a Ron English. He played at Michigan, so like I don't know necessarily how that would go over.
That's one name I was going to throw out, and I know that a lot of people would hate that because of the Michigan connection, but I think
Louisville's defense looks good.
If I'm not mistaken. Louisville's defense looks good, and not just because of their last game against Brock Glenn or whatever, but during the season, like especially for Louisville, they've been looking strong. But yeah, it's just a Michigan connection, that old pesky thing. So I don't know if it's going to work out.
Yeah, for sure. So those are just some names that come to mind outside of the Smith tree. But yeah, like I always said, like Lake and Parker would be like A+ hires. Like what Lake had done as the defensive backs coach at Washington before they made him the DC, and then what he did as the DC, it's just an unprecedented run of talent development at the DB position. Like you could go on and on. Like even his busts, like Sidney Jones and Kevin King, like those guys were so good in college. And then you look at the guys like Budda Baker and Byron Murphy and Trent McDuffie, and those guys are on another level, even in the NFL right now. Like what he did over there as the defensive backs coach was unreal. made him the DC, and they went to the playoff. Even
Yep.
as the head coach, like I get he had that little incident where like he pushed a player, and by then they were already like inept on offense, and his hire of John Donovan as the OC was horrible, and they were just
Not
like, all
great.
right, let's get rid of this guy, and they paid him his full buyout. It wasn't any firing for cause thing. Like it wasn't a real incident. It was just like one of those things where it was like, all right, it just doesn't seem like it's getting better. And now we have like kind of the team is like pushing back, and like that was like not like that doesn't mean a single thing to me how that went down at the very end. And right now, like he's on the Rams as the assistant head coach, which I don't know how you get a title of assistant head coach and not even have a position group to monitor. Like,
That's
I mean,
an awesome
great.
job. Right.
Yeah,
That is a dream job.
yeah, yeah. So one of the websites I stumbled upon said he makes 1.5 million. I don't know if that's true, but I also can't find
Right.
anything to counter that.
I
Um,
know.
but yeah, so like Lake and Parker would have been like 99 out of 100 level grades. Maybe Parker would be 99 and Lake would be 97. But like someone like a Rossi or like maybe a Leonard, like a Rossi would for me would be like an 88 out of 100, and maybe a Leonard would be like right in that same tier as well. Avalos would have been in a similar tier, but I think if you could get a guy that's the Midwest version and who has done it with little talent, like Avalos, his claim to fame, other than the Boise run, was he did it at Oregon. But like I'd rather see top 10 defenses at Minnesota than Oregon any day. So I'd even put Rossi ahead of Avalos these days, even though I probably wasn't thinking that a week or two ago. But that's kind of where my mind is with just the DC candidates right now.
I just still love that it wasn't a deep dive, even though we got stats from the last 4 years. You rewatch games, you took notes on the personnel, and if that's a shallow JT dive, oh my, woo! Deep dives have got to be insane. But no, that's a bang up answer right there. I feel like this whole episode I've just been grilling you with questions, so sorry it went that way. But man, as always,
I feel bad for just going
good.
on monologue after monologue. That's what I feel bad about.
Oh, I'm sure the listeners and viewers hate the inside information and the very well thought out answers. Yeah, I'm sure they're punching the air right now instead of just the jackassery from me that would just be being spewed. No, this was very informative for everyone here. But yes, didn't mean to make this into like the whole Q&A where I'm just popping questions off you. But hey, sometimes that's what we need,
I
baby. That's what we need sometimes.
Yeah, I think the most I guess most interesting part is like after the the DCR linebackers coach gets hired, looking at maybe who from their current job, like who could somebody from that roster maybe come along with him. I don't know if that necessarily happens at those levels. Like I don't recall the last time a DC got poached and a ton of his guys just went with him. So I don't know if that's a real thing, but that'd be the first thing that I'd be excited to look at. And if not, like if that doesn't happen in droves, linebacker sticks out to me a ton. Like they have to get some linebackers here.
Yeah,
I think
right.
like just using Ross's defense, for example, like the 3-4 there, but like you can really do this exercise for anybody. You're essentially okay with Jacoby Windman and Jordan Hall spots. Like there's no questions there. Jordan Hall, like he'd be the Mike, and Jacoby Windman, either he's going to be a Sam in a 4-3 guys defense, or in like a 3-4, he'd be the stand-up edge in like a Rossi defense. So like those spots are good. But you need two guys after that, or possibly one guy if it's a 4-3, that are coverage guys and backups. You need backups that are coverage guys too, because you really don't have any replacements for the starting coverage guy when he's not even on the roster to begin with. So that's a big need. They need linebackers, especially guys that can cover. And then I guess just continuing down the theme of what they need in the portal, offensive linemen, which not a lot of good talent there. You're seeing Oklahoma take some guys that Michigan State fans would kind of raise eyebrows at, but more power to the kid, and that's what you like to see, and hopefully he does well there. But
Best of luck. Rooting for you.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely, no question about it. But it goes to show kind of how thin it is at offensive tackle, and it's tough. But
it's tough out here in the streets, man.
Yeah,
it's tough out here in the streets.
That's why, like one thing that I would always maintain, no matter how the last tenure went down, there's lots of valid criticism about like playing the wrong guys and the older guys regressing and all that from Coach Cap and the offense line room. But there was never any question that an offensively rebuild is supposed to take multiple years. Now, it shouldn't look like that in year 4 because your oldest guys have regressed for sure. But like, no matter who you are, like you see it with Coach Prime, like he has Heisman Trophy candidates running around at cornerback and receiver and quarterback, but No, it doesn't matter who you are. That offense
Doesn't
line
matter.
rebuild is not happening instantaneously. That is not happening in less than a several year span.
No. Tougher Shadur Sanders out there, but oh well.
Yeah.
Sweet NIL deals out there, so it's good at least.
Anything else you'd like to talk about, Matt?
I can't think of another sport. No, so football is the only.
Yeah, no, I wasn't entertaining
really
any other sport.
Days. No. So then, no, I don't have anything else to talk about.
Thoughts about Florida State being left out of the playoff, even though it's been a few days.
Right decision. I mean, look, and does it go against everything a sport stands for? Yeah, it does. 100% it does. And hey, look, we could even look at our own history for amazing upsets that happen. I know I didn't feel too smooth about the game going into Columbus in 2015 with Tyler O'Connor. And oh my God, the spread's 10. Now it's 11. Now it's 12. That's about where the spread would have been if Florida State kicked off against Michigan. But guys, the job for the College Football Playoff Committee is to field the best 4 teams. They did the correct thing, not the right thing, but they did the correct thing. So yeah, it sucks, but
I have another question for you, Matt.
Offense. Yeah.
Did they get the best 4 teams in? And I ask you this with the baked-in question of, if Georgia and Texas played, who do you think would win that game?
Yeah. See, I was afraid you were going to ask that because now I'm in a pickle. Now I'm painted in a corner because, oh God, I don't know who. No, I know who would be favored. It'd be Georgia. Georgia would be favored, but I just don't know by how many points. My guess
4,
would be
3.5.
I was gonna say 4.5, 5. Yeah.
Okay.
And that might be low. I don't know. So yeah, am I being a hypocrite? Am I going against everything I just said? Yes, but I think the gap between a Georgia and Texas is smaller than it is between a Florida State and Alabama.
I don't think you're being a hypocrite. I think the best way to summarize it is
just a slight one.
I think the best way to summarize it is I don't think the committee got it right in terms of the best 4 teams, but I think they got it right in the fact that Florida State shouldn't have been in it. Because
it sucks.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
But you're right.
Right. Yeah. If I was to say, if the criteria was, all right, committee, figure out the 4 best teams where on a neutral site you'd have confidence that these are the matchups that would contain the 4 best teams in the country. I don't believe they got that. I believe Georgia has to be in that. At the same time, if we were to say most deserving teams, Florida State should be in there. So I don't think they truly fit either criteria. But I like what they did at the end of the day. So they might have been playing both sides and gotten neither side right. But you just can't have Florida State go out there and I think they would have gotten shut out by Alabama. I think they would have gotten shut out by Michigan. I think if they played Texas, they wouldn't have gotten shut out, but I think they would have lost by 17 or 20. So that just can't be a product that you're putting out there on TV, in my opinion.
I do feel so terrible for the Seminoles defense, especially because from the start of the year against LSU, I know a lot of eyes were on Keon Coleman as he scored 8 touchdowns. I know Jordan Travis is looking good, but their defense has had some animals on it this year. They were dogs the entire stretch of the year, even to the bitter end against Louisville. But you got to move the ball too. You got to move the ball. And I feel terrible for Brock Glenn too, because that guy is probably just at home being oh God, if I just didn't throw 8 of 23 passing or whatever, we're probably in the playoff. But that was the breaks. It's tough. It sucks. I don't know anything else to say other than it sucks, but I'm very happy that this is the college football playoff.
Yes.
It got 2 entertaining games.
The thing for me was I was arguing with some friends on Friday night. And I was saying it was a foregone conclusion that Florida State's in. And I'm thinking man, this is going to suck. Georgia, at the time I was thinking if Georgia beats Alabama, they're the ones who I'm man, Georgia's going to get a bye here. This is going to kind of ruin the first round of the playoffs. And some friends were no, Florida State's not a lock to get it even if they win. I'm you're crazy. They're not leaving an undefeated Power 4 champion out of the playoff.
That's how I felt.
Then, Matt, I'm sitting there watching the ACC championship game. And at halftime, I'm thinking, there is absolutely no way that you're telling me human beings are going to sit in a room and say, this product deserves a spot in the college football playoff, no matter what they did previously with with Jordan Travis as the quarterback.
Yeah.
My opinion went from there's no way they're getting left out to you cannot tell me humans, computers maybe, computers probably would have had them in. Humans, the purpose of a human committee to be subjective. You cannot look at that game and say they need to be in the greatest stage of college football.
I just can't believe they did it. Okay, no, I shouldn't say that. That's a very naive thing to say because, God, I saw a tweet. I really wish I bookmarked it, but like this is going to save ESPN. I think it's upwards of like $150 million in ads and viewerships, or however that number works. Like, so yeah, I can see how it happened, but like I just can't. I'm almost shocked. I'm like, oh my God, like they actually did it. I didn't think they would have the stones to do it, but what are a few angry people in Tallahassee anyway? You know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Oh man, I also can't believe that like no one has been on the news for trying to, really do some damage to someone in the committee. But
this is true
that everyone's being behaved. That's good that everyone, for the most part, is being behaved.
I think they just haven't been smart enough to uncover like any personal information or addresses or anything to show up at anyone's houses with like toilet paper and hopefully nothing more lethal.
Soft fan base. I'll say it actually. Yeah, that's right. Oh, if that happened to Michigan State, look, I'm not proud to say this. I'm not bragging about this, but I would have had everyone's address on that committee posted online. Within the hour, phone numbers. Oh, it would not have been a healthy scene of behavior that I would have displayed. But
there's absolutely no way that Big Sad wouldn't have had every committee member's addresses locked and loaded by like the fourth commercial break of that rating show. If it was
correct. Again, not proud of it, but I'm just being honest. I would be furious if that's how it unfolded for Michigan State one day. I just can't wait for the 12-team play. My biggest takeaway is that I cannot wait for the 12-team playoff. And why didn't this start sooner? I know I'm echoing a lot of what a lot of other people said, that 5 Power 5 teams and 4 spots in the playoffs has never made sense. But this year especially, God, I mean, these matchups would have been great. The home field is going to be awesome. I just can't wait for it to kick off.
The only downside is like the last game of the season, like Michigan, Ohio State, right? That doesn't mean a single thing other than bragging rights. And does the bragging rights part even mean much if they're going to play again next week in Indianapolis and then possibly in the second round of the playoff? Three times in a 4-game span?
I keep hearing that. And like I also heard that like, if this is 12-team playoff, Oregon can play Washington again. Okay, sick. Like those were 2 great games. True. Like that's awesome. And here's the other thing too. It's like, yes, that specific Ohio State Michigan game wouldn't have mattered to see who goes on to the college football playoff, but it's still the rivalry, this and that. Right. But it does matter of like who gets the bye. And also you zoom out from that game, there are other games across the country that actually matter, like the Penn State game against Michigan State at Ford Field. That would have mattered a lot for the Nittany Lions. And I don't have the last week's schedule at the top of my head, but like there are other games around the schedule.
Yeah, like the Utah tier of teams, like that tier of team that like is always out of the playoff picture by week 11, but now they never will be basically out of the picture because they're always in the 9 through 14 range.
Yeah. And so it's just games like that too. Yeah. Like just the last week of the season, okay, what would it have looked like? And then like, okay, Ole Miss, if they win their game against Mississippi State, okay, then they're in. So I don't know. Like, yes, those, and of course the games I'm naming, I'm not stupid. I know they don't have the stature that Ohio State, Michigan does. But for college football nuts like me and you and everyone listening and watching, like, I just think it makes the last week more entertaining. So that's true. That's my take on it. That's just where I sit.
And then we could be debating like even bigger stuff that is more heinous than what the committee did with Florida State, and that is the G5 champion in the committee in the 12-team playoff having it be 133rd ranked Liberty instead of SMU.
That was crazy.
Yeah, so that would have been the topic if it was 12 teams this year. That would have been good.
You talk about getting lost in the shuffle. Like, no one cared about that whatsoever. I didn't even realize it until, like, Sunday night at 10 p.m. I was like, hey, where's SMU playing? Did they get the Orange Bowl? Did they get the Cotton Bowl? Oh, they didn't get any of those bowl games. What the hell happened here?
Yeah. Well, we being real ball knowers, Matt, at the 49-minute mark of the SD for All show, we have addressed the crimes of the committee in respect to Liberty and SMU. So
yes, mark it off your bingo card, everyone. That's right.
I think that wraps up this week's episode of the SD for All show. Definitely go ahead and like and subscribe and comment. Emphasis on subscribe. Had about 8,000 viewers last week, but only about 1.1K subscribers. So the math is not adding up. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Helps the algorithm a ton. And as I've said before, we don't spam you with short video cut-ups throughout the week. So it'd be well worth your time from an organized, streamlined feed perspective to subscribe. So with that, I'm Justin Thin. There was Matt Sheehan. And we will be back to maybe recap some of these official visits happening in the next couple of weeks. And definitely we'll be previewing signing day. So stay tuned. And that's why you got to subscribe, because we don't know when we'll be back, but we'll be back soon. So appreciate everyone.
Never on schedule, but always on time. That's
That's
right.
right.
The SD4L.
That's right.
Bang. Let's go.
All right. See you guys.